In the quiet town of Enfield, England, in the late 1970s, an unassuming council house became the center of one of the most well-documented and chilling poltergeist cases in history. Hey everyone, and welcome to Truth or Fiction. On this channel, I read stories of crime, mystery, and intrigue, and at the end of each story, we find out together if the story is true or if it is a creation of someone's dark and twisted imagination. The Hodgson family, a single mother named Peggy, and her 4 children, Margaret, Janet, Johnny, and Billy, were ordinary people living an ordinary life until the summer of 1977, when their world was turned upside down by a series of terrifying and unexplainable events. What started as minor disturbances soon escalated into a full-fledged supernatural ordeal that would perplex investigators, terrify skeptics, and captivate the public. Now, the Hodgson family was a typical working-class family, living in a modest council house at 284 Green Street. Peggy Hodgson, the matriarch, was a resilient and hard-working woman, raising her children alone after her husband left the family. Reports indicate that her husband abandoned her and their 4 children, leaving her to raise them on her own under challenging financial circumstances. Despite this, she remained strong and dedicated to her children. She did her best to provide for her children, taking on various jobs to make ends meet. Life was far from easy, but she managed to create a stable home for her 4 children, despite the financial difficulties, while navigating the terrifying events that would yet unfold. Margaret, the eldest daughter at 13 years old, was mature for her age, often helping her mother care for her younger siblings. She was quiet and reserved, preferring to stay out of trouble and keep the household running smoothly. Janet, the second eldest at 11 years old, was the opposite. She was outspoken, lively, and known for her adventurous spirit. She had a strong personality and often played the role of protector for her younger brothers. This made her the most vulnerable to the strange occurrences that would later consume their household. Johnny, at 10 years old, was an active and mischievous boy who often looked up to Janet for guidance. Though he was skeptical at first about the supernatural events, he soon found himself unable to deny that what he was experiencing was real. Billy, the youngest at 7, was the most innocent and impressionable of the children. The haunting left a lasting impact on him, instilling a deep fear of the unknown that would follow him well into adulthood. Despite the hardships, the Hodgson family had a strong bond, always supporting each other through their struggles. The children found solace in playing together and relying on their mother for reassurance. Peggy, though burdened with the weight of single parenthood, was fiercely protective of her children and did everything she could to keep them safe. However, when the disturbances began, she found herself powerless against the unknown forces invading their home. The haunting began subtly, almost playfully. It was August when an 11-year-old Janet and her 10-year-old brother Johnny first noticed something strange. They heard knocking sounds coming from the walls of their shared bedroom. At first, their mother dismissed their claims as the usual noises of an old house settling or childhood imagination. However, as the nights went on, the knocks became louder, more insistent, and disturbingly rhythmic, as if responding to the family's voices. Then, the furniture began moving. One evening, as Peggy tucked her children into bed, a heavy chest of drawers slid several feet across the room, seemingly of its own accord. Startled, Peggy tried to push it back into place, but an unseen force resisted her efforts. That was when she knew something was terribly wrong. In a panic, she gathered her children and fled to the neighbor's house. They stayed there until morning, too frightened to return. The next day, Peggy called the police. When officers arrived, they conducted a thorough search of the house, but found nothing suspicious. That was until Police Constable Carolyn Heaps witnessed a chair move approximately half an inch off the floor and slide about 3 or 4 feet across the living room. Despite thorough investigations, the officers could not determine the cause of the movement. This incident was documented in their official reports, adding a layer of credibility to the claims of paranormal activity. However, the police could do little more than advise the family to seek help elsewhere. Desperate, Peggy reached out to the Daily Mirror newspaper, hoping that journalists could shed light on the strange occurrences. A team of reporters arrived, only to experience objects flying through the air, furniture tipping over, and even Janet being seemingly flung from her bed by an invisible force. Their stories ignited widespread interest, drawing the attention of the Society for Psychical Research, which sent investigator Maurice Grosse to examine the case. Maurice Grosse was born in London, March 6, 1919. He was a British inventor and paranormal investigator. Maurice was best known for his involvement in the Enfield Poltergeist case. He was educated at the Regent Street Polytechnic, where he completed an apprenticeship in commercial art and design. During World War II, Grosse served with the Royal Artillery and was among those evacuated from Dunkirk in 1940. In 1941, he was commissioned and took responsibility for the welfare of Italian prisoners of war for the remainder of the conflict. In 1976, he experienced his own personal tragedy, the death of his daughter Janet in a motorcycle accident, which ultimately led Grosse to join the Society for Psychical Research and the Ghost Club. In September 1977, he began investigating the Enfield Poltergeist case. Grosse, a seasoned researcher of paranormal phenomena, set up recording equipment and spent countless hours with the Hodgson family. What he documented defies rational explanation. The knocks, the moving furniture, and even chilling voices speaking through Janet were all captured on tape. Grosse was soon joined by fellow investigator Guy Léon Playfair. Guy Léon Playfair, born on April 5, 1935, was a British writer and paranormal researcher. Born in Quetta, British India, he was the son of Major General Ian Playfair and novelist Jocelyn Playfair. He was educated in England and studied modern languages at the University of Cambridge. After completing national service as a translator with the Royal Air Force, he pursued a career in journalism, contributing to publications such as Life magazine. In the early 1960s, Playfair moved to Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, where he worked for a decade as a freelance journalist for international outlets including The Economist, Time, The Guardian, and the Associated Press. During his time in Brazil, he developed an interest in the paranormal, particularly after witnessing a psychic healer in action. This experience led him to investigate a poltergeist case in Sao Paulo in 1973, marking the beginning of his involvement in psychical research. As the disturbances in the Hodgson household grew more severe, it became evident that Janet was at the heart of the activity. Objects would often move when she was present, and she claimed she could feel a force taking control of her body. The most terrifying aspect of the case, however, was the voice. Janet began speaking in a deep, gravelly tone, one that sounded nothing like her usual voice. The voice claimed to belong to a man named Bill Wilkins. Bill Wilkins was a former resident of 284 Green Street. He lived there with his family until his death on June 20th, 1963. Through Janet, Bill Wilkins provided specific details about Wilkins' life and death, including his blindness and how he had died in an armchair in the very same home. Shockingly, when researchers investigated, they discovered that a man named Bill Wilkins had indeed lived and died in the house under the very circumstances Janet had described, all of which were details that she could not have known. These specific details were later corroborated by Wilkins' son, who also recognized his father's voice when recordings were played on the radio. While specific details about Wilkins' personal life and occupation are scarce, his post-mortem association with the Enfield case has made him a notable figure in discussions about the paranormal. The accuracy of the information conveyed by Janet, which she was unlikely to have known otherwise, has been cited by some researchers as compelling evidence of paranormal activity. The recordings of Janet's voice are among the most disturbing evidence collected in the case. On some occasions, she would speak in the guttural tones for hours without straining her vocal cords, something doctors found inexplicable. The malevolent entity seemed to enjoy tormenting the family, knocking on walls at all hours, flipping furniture, and even sending Janet into violent trances where she would levitate above her bed, as documented in now famous photographs. Despite the wealth of evidence, many skeptics dismissed the Enfield poltergeist as a hoax. Critics pointed out that Janet and her siblings were caught faking some of the phenomena, bending spoons and deliberately tipping furniture. However, those who believe in the haunting argue that while some of the incidents may have been exaggerated, the sheer volume of unexplainable occurrences ruled out a complete fabrication. Gross remained convinced of the haunting's authenticity, claiming that he witnessed many events firsthand. Ed and Lorraine Warren, famous American paranormal investigators, also visited the house and declared the presence of a demonic entity. They are often associated with the Enfield Poltergeist case due to their portrayal in popular media. However, their actual involvement was minimal. According to researcher Brian Dunning, the Warrens made a brief visit to the Enfield house during the investigation. Ed Warren attempted to persuade investigator Guy Leon that financial gains could be achieved by writing books and selling movie rights about the case. After this discussion, the Warrens departed, having spent only a short time at the location. Despite their limited participation, the Warrens publicly expressed their belief that the events at Enfield had a supernatural explanation. However, after spending significantly more time at the Enfield home, Playfair and his colleague Maurice Grosse, who conducted extensive investigations, were more cautious in their conclusions, acknowledging both genuine phenomena and instances where the children were involved and may have exaggerated or fabricated events. And this story is true. Or at least as true as a ghost encounter story can be, I suppose. The haunting continued for nearly 2 years before gradually fading away. By 1979, the disturbances had ceased entirely, and the Hodgson family attempted to return to normalcy. But for Janet, life was never the same. She later revealed that she had been bullied at school because of the publicity and had struggled with trauma for years. Though she admitted that some of the phenomena might have been exaggerated, she maintained that the majority of the haunting was real. In the decades since, the Enfield Poltergeist case has been adapted into books, documentaries, and movies, most notably being The Conjuring 2. While skeptics continue to argue against its legitimacy, the sheer volume of first-hand accounts and documented evidence makes it one of the most compelling poltergeist cases in history. Whether one believes in ghosts or not, the story of the Hodgson family remains one of the most chilling and mysterious hauntings ever recorded. So, if you like this story, please subscribe and comment, and we will see you in the next one.